All right, well, welcome everyone to WorkSmart Live Achievement Unlocked, which is part of our Level Up series, where we teach you how to level up your business game with better tech tools and better tech skills. I am Michaela. Thank you all for joining us. And of course, we also have the amazing Marissa here today with us. If you're new here, our Level Up series consists of 2 webinars per month. So the first is designed to show business leaders how you can strategically build tech into your normal business operations. And the second one of the month is designed more to help team members build their technology skills using some of the same tools that we discussed in the first webinar. So we are now currently on month 2 of Level Up. So if you missed any of last month's, you can check out our website, and we have posted all of the recordings where you can catch up there. So with all that being said, today we'll be focusing on how you can level up your employee productivity by using Microsoft 365 tools that you probably already have.
It's true. You probably do. All right, well, let's get started then on leveling up. So Michaela obviously said we're talking about productivity today. And when we talk about productivity in the modern workplace, we have to talk about more than just an attitude, right? It requires us to have the right technology, whether it's the devices or the applications, your internet, all of those things go into helping make us feel successful in our everyday work. The good news is that Microsoft 365 has a lot of tools packaged in their subscription. So it's important for us to be aware as business leaders what tools are available to our team, and then to help our team understand how to use those for the value to its fullest extent. And that's why we're here today. As you may know, we're going to talk about a couple of different things here. When we talk about productivity in Microsoft 365, we'll probably talk about it for hours. But today we're going to focus on organizing Microsoft Teams for clarity. We're also going to talk about bringing it all together. Little IT pun in the middle there. We're going to talk about automation and the balance between work and well-being. So a lot of these aren't new topics, but we'll have some key pieces in there to really help you level up. So we begin with the basics, and that is organizing your teams for clarity. We all know that Microsoft Teams really helps us with file sharing and group collaboration. It's designed to do this in a way that makes it easy for your team. I know, brilliant. I know, teams for your team. And the question that we get a lot when we talk about Microsoft Teams and when we've done our webinars on Teams training in the past, we get this question of, what's your recommendations for setting it up? And the answer, unfortunately, the answer is, it depends. So we are starting here today just to kind of remind you a couple of things. Teams are the group of the groups of people that gather around a common goal. This is easily identified as your organizational structure, your departments. They could also be collaborative processes, though. It could be a particular project. It could be just about onboarding your clients. It could be about supporting your product. It doesn't have to be around a department. It could be a mix of both. The goal is, though, to use channels within those teams, right? The teams are the people. The channels are the mechanism, those dedicated workspaces where you can come together over a particular topic or workflow to really make sure that the work is organized. So how could we possibly become disorganized in Microsoft Teams with these simple topics? Well, by default, they're open to everyone on the team, these channels. So that means they have access to all the files, they have access to all the conversations. So what happens is when we want to have a sensitive conversation or a very focused conversation with certain people, it gets a little crowded when everyone can join. So we recommend using private channels for those particular types of things. Instead of creating another team, the goal is to keep the number of teams smaller, and then using those channels, whether standard or private, to be able to really focus in on the work specifically. Take a pause there. Oh, I do want to remind you, really cool. Shared channels are coming. They're not available yet. We've talked about this in the past about guests being able to use your Microsoft Teams environment. They don't have access to everything, but they have access to enough to help them collaborate. Coming soon is the idea of a shared channel so that you can share a specific channel externally without having to set up guest users in your environment. Guest users don't have to be licensed, but they do have to be configured in your your Microsoft 365 tenant. When we talk about Teams, especially if you watched our cheat code about notifications that we put out last month, head over to the webinar to check it out if you didn't. You can tag people, or I should say you can @mention people, where you use the @ symbol, their name, or @ symbol and team, @ symbol and channel. But remember, that notifies everybody in that group. So if you commonly need to refer to a certain group of people, you can actually go into the team and you can add your own tags. So if you want to have, like at WorkSmart, if we want to have the marketing gals tag, it would be me, Dawn, and Michaela without having to tag @marketing, which in a certain team would contain everybody throughout the organization. So smart to kind of chunk things up. Another thing that we probably don't use as often as we might need to is something called channel moderation. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It gives you the ability to moderate or control who can post and reply. It doesn't mean that they can't post at all. It just means that somebody, whether it's the team owner or you can actually designate people to be moderators, but it helps you curate the conversation. So you make sure you're controlling, if it's SOP information, you can make sure that you approve what's being able to contribute. Now, another part that adds to disorganization in Teams is that with every channel you create, you're actually creating a files folder. Whether it's the general channel or in this case, the design channel, any of these will have this default folder. The good news is you don't actually have to be in Teams in order to get to these files. You can get to them through SharePoint or OneDrive. But when you create these channels, you get one default folder. I highly recommend that once you create this channel, or if you've created the channel and haven't done so yet, go ahead and create a folder structure within that Files tab. That will make sure that everything that you upload can get stored properly. So if you think about when you are using a file share on a server, you're going and building your folder structure. This is almost identical, except your interface is nice and pretty in here within Teams. That piece about disorganization, warning, the documents that you upload in the Teams conversation will actually go to the root of this folder. So as you can see, all these little folders, we've got an assets folder, we've got a backup folder. There's files underneath it. Those files are most likely from the conversation thread where people are like, hey, I want to show you this building the Contoso Mark 8 project team PowerPoint. When they upload it right there in the conversation, it just gets dumped here. So file organization out the window. So highly recommend that you encourage your employees to store them in the proper folder. Once you do that, you can go and hit the particular file you'd like to share, copy the link, and add that to your conversation thread so that the files are preserved where you want them to be. Also remember that if you change anything on the folder structure naming, those links will get broken. So be very thoughtful about the folders and where you store things, because once you start sharing things, you want to make sure that people in the future can get to what they need to. I'm going to take a pause there. Michaela, do we have any questions relevant at the moment?
I don't believe so. You seem to be very straightforward and explaining yourself very well.
It might be because we've talked about the 3 tiers for teams. The team, the people, the channels, the tools, and then we also like to include the third one, which is the third tier, which is the tabs. And we'll come back to tabs here in a second.
I'll also throw the link to our blog in the chat. So I know you mentioned the cheat codes. So all the cheat codes and all our other tip videos are on the blog if you want to check those out after the webinar today.
Yes, absolutely. We might have a few more cheat codes coming out soon, so stay tuned.
Maybe.
All right, so let's talk about bringing it all together, because this is where we're going to start to see things that are a little bit more not unique, but things that maybe we haven't really talked about before. Because we're using more technology in our daily routines, it can be frustrating for end users, for your team. There's more passwords, there's more windows. When you tie all these things together, though, when your tools are unified, you can have a better experience, which leads to higher engagement, right? Efficiency leads to happiness. So next up, imagine this. We're going to talk about how we bring those tools together with Microsoft 365. Using Azure Active Directory, and we've talked about Azure AD a little bit before, you have the option to integrate thousands of apps, whether they're Microsoft 365, like OneDrive, or something external like Salesforce or Box. As you can see, I'm in marketing, so I added things like HubSpot and Creative Cloud because those are the tools I use. But there are thousands of web apps. Even there's some integration that even if it's not a supported app, there's ways to configure what's called single sign-on. This makes sure that you're auto-logged into all of the tools that help you do your day. So that way, when you log onto your computer, you're authenticating into Office 365 / Microsoft 365. And then you're auto-logged into those other applications as well. So you can start moving around without having to log in again. Not only does that enhance your experience, however, I will say, it also increases your security because you are controlling one username, one password for all of your accounts, or excuse me, for all of your users across all of their apps. So there's definitely a security management and enforcement benefit, but that single sign-on really helps your team not have to log into everything. Your users don't really care about all the things that go on in the background. What they care about is the quick access. So what they'll be able to do is they'll be able to go to a link to see all of the apps that they have access to, and they can click into those links, kind of like a dashboard, and they can go in and log in and sign into those tools. There's also ways to integrate those apps into Microsoft 365, which will also, into Teams, excuse me, which will also authenticate automatically there. So I mentioned about bringing your apps into Teams. One of the great ways to do this is by using your tabs. So those are the tabs across the channels when you go into that main screen like you're seeing on your screen now. You can add Microsoft 365 apps. You'll see the Wiki is a Microsoft app. Whiteboard is a Microsoft app. You can add Planner for project management. You can also add external websites. So if there's a particular website your team visits often, you might want to add it there. As you can see, we can also do direct files. So if you want to attach a PowerPoint or a Word document, there's lots of third-party apps that integrate as well. And so when you do this, when you add a tab, you'll be able to access all of those apps right there. The other thing that you can do is on the left panel, that navigation pane, you can add apps as your personal app, which just means that you're adding it into the hub, and you'll be able to see different views instead of just in the channel. And you'll see more of that here shortly. Automation is a huge benefit that small businesses haven't played, an area that they haven't played in yet. But with Microsoft 365, it's a tool called Power Automate, used to be called Flow. It is a really simple solution to finding the different pieces of Microsoft 365 and beyond and having them work together. So it's another extension of that unified experience, but it's also, it helps us automate, but it helps us automate repetitive tasks that would otherwise take a lot of work, maybe not hard work, but if we let the technology take care of that, then we can focus on things that are going to take more of our time. So the apps that we use on a regular basis are a great place to start. What you're seeing here is the Power Automate app in the browser, and there are lots of templates. So now you don't even have to create anything. You can just go off of a template. But of course, you also have the ability to add your own workflow and to create it together. So we're going to jump into that a little bit. So this is from a template. We've talked about Microsoft Forms before. We've obviously talked about Microsoft Teams. Here, what we're doing is we're setting up a workflow that when a form response is submitted, we've created this poll. Do you like polls? When we get the responses, you can certainly check the spreadsheet that forms will populate. But how great would it be if it just populated in Teams where we're already working? So this template allows us to fill in the pieces to be able to get the information that we need in the place that we're working. From here, if you wanted to also get an email notification or trigger a task of some sort, you could definitely add that on very easily if you see the add an action there at the bottom. But here on the screen, I'm just kind of going through the message that you'll see in Teams, formatting it, making sure it looks good before we go ahead and save it. And once we do, so right now we're adding the what the response was and who the responder was, so we have the right information. And once we're finished and we save that, what we see in the conversation thread where we designated it to show up, we'll see those responses as they come in real time. These happen to come in at the same time. Weirdly enough, the same person responded, but they just were having a day where 50% of their brain said yes and 50% of the brain said no. But, oh no, we forgot the title. So the survey is great to know the response, but if you have multiple surveys going out, you probably want to know. You could always go back into the Power Automate app, look at your flows that are existing, and edit those to make sure you're always tweaking to get the right information where you need it. Pretty easy. The flip side of using a template is obviously doing something from scratch, and it can sound very daunting, but it's actually pretty easy. One of the things that we talked about in one of our cheat codes was the approvals process in Microsoft Teams. Those approvals give you two options. You can approve and you can reject. If you want something more than that, you can actually very easily create an automated approval that has multiple responses, custom responses. So here I'm choosing my operation. It's an approval. So I'm just going to look for that. This start and wait for an approval. I'm going to click it. It says the approval type. It's very self-explanatory in which ones I want. I want the custom responses. So here I'm just going to go in and I'm going to fill in my information, which are the responses that I want. I'll take a minute and here I am thinking about what the responses should be. Approve, maybe some reject, but also maybe I just need more information. And I don't necessarily want people to reject it if I need to see that they need more information. So I'll go ahead and add that, fill in all my details. And then the next thing that comes, and we started that video over, but what comes from there is going to give you that information just as we put it in, and set up the flow to happen. Let me see if I can get to the end of this video so you can see kind of what I'm talking about, the end product to be. It doesn't like me, it wants to keep starting over. We'll keep going and then I'll come back if we could get to it, so you guys can see kind of what that final product was. There's lots of different ways. I'm gonna hop back here for a second. There's lots of different ways, as you can see on the left. There's the templates, there's your create. You can manage your existing flows. You can search by the type of app that you're looking for. There's tons and tons and tons of templates. So I highly recommend that you take a look at this, and don't be completely overwhelmed when you do. It looks a lot more daunting than it is. All right. We're going into the next section, Michaela. So before I start talking about something else, do we have any questions?
There was a question about the surveys and forms part in Teams. Are you able to regulate who can see responses and or share responses to certain teams?
Absolutely. So with forms, when you create a form, it's the Microsoft Form website. If you go into your Microsoft 365 portal, you'll see all of your apps. You can click to form, or you can create a form right from within Teams. When you do that, you will create your form. It'll give you a link to share your form. It'll also give you a link and options for how you get those results. So the other day, Michaela sent out a survey to our team about working through demoing a tool. And she has the results, but she copied that link to share it with me. It's a different link than submitting the responses, which she shared publicly. You can limit it to be internally to your organization. You can limit it to anyone who has a legitimate Microsoft 365 account, or you can open it up to everybody. So you have a lot of flexibility. If you missed last week's, 2 weeks ago, I feel like we do these every week, but we don't. We do them every other week. We talked about Teams meetings, and one of the things in the meetings were polls and surveys, which features the forms tool. So if you're curious as to see what that looks like in the middle of a meeting, and real time, you can control, eliminate, or approve real-time responses in those meetings as well. So I highly recommend checking that out. Of course, if you have any other questions about forms, we're happy to answer them.
For sure.
Anything else before I move on?
I think that's all for that section.
Cool. All right. So balancing work and wellness. We know throughout this last year, we do know that productivity it has to be balanced with compassion. And in fact, when I was preparing for this, something that struck to me was that employee burnout accounts for 20 to 50% of a company's annual employee turnover costs. So burnout is an expensive effect of what some people might think as too much to do. But in that same study, we've also identified that a lot of the overload that's causing burnout is actually driven by people's desire to be helpful. So it may not come down to the workload. It may come down to being available, being helpful. And we all know that well-being matters because it leads to employee turnover, but we're all people. So obviously the compassion piece is very important in a growth-minded organization. Some things that we've already talked about that help with this is using Together Mode in video meetings. It helps you feel more in person. So if you haven't tried out Together Mode, I highly recommend that you do, and encouraging people to do so as well. Something else that I myself could get better at, I find myself working at all hours of the day and night, and I send emails. And I don't expect people to respond to them, but sending the email may put pressure on other people to be available and to respond, or they may just spend energy thinking about it. Last webinar, we talked about time blocks for focusing to make sure that we're being respectful of our time in terms of productivity. There's also a trick to doing this at the beginning and the end of the day where we naturally used to commute. If you're no longer commuting, blocking that time will help transition into the day as well as out of the day. Breaks during the day are important. I used to be really good about this out in the office. I would grab people and we would go for walks. But now that I'm, yes, I say sequestered, quarantined, none of those. But now that I'm not with my fellow teammates, I don't get out and walk as much. So those scheduling breaks is just as important as scheduling in that focus time. And then, of course, between your meetings, making sure that you have time to get between those meetings. And then also just making sure that you schedule those meetings in a time kind of, if you make them all centered around the morning, then you have more time to do and to focus in the afternoon. So these are things that we've kind of talked about before, and we're talking about technology. So Marissa, why are we bringing these pieces up? Well, obviously there's lots of maybe not obviously, but there are lots of things that we can do within Microsoft 365 to support all of these things. So it's not just talking about the habits that we want, but it's also supporting those habits. We are, in 2021, we are going to be seeing a new product. You might have already heard about it. It's called Microsoft Viva. It's got these 4 components to it. It is not a subscription that's fully baked into all Microsoft 365. It is, it's an employee kind of engagement experience platform. So it is going to be additional. We're not going to talk about these components today. What we are going to talk about very briefly is the MyAnalytics component. So Microsoft Viva is an upgrade to 2 pieces of software through Microsoft, MyAnalytics and Workplace Analytics. You may have seen MyAnalytics because that is the built-in personal productivity kind of insights tool. Workplace Analytics is an add-on basically to any subscription that has an Exchange Online component. So if you have hosted email through Microsoft 365, you can add on Workplace Analytics. The difference between these two is just one thing. MyAnalytics is based on personal productivity. It's based on the individual. Workplace Analytics is for the team. It's for the manager to be able to identify opportunities to improve collaboration, workplace effectiveness, all the things. More people today, I can't imagine why, after the year and such we've had, that people feel like they lack control over their time with work. That feeling may be accurate, but without paying attention to the data, how do we know? So we're not, like I said, we're not going to get into Viva. We're not going to get into Workplace Analytics, but I do think that there's a lot of benefit in these MyAnalytics reports. And so I'd like to share those with you because they really do support good habits. And these are individual dashboards that your team can go to. So if you encourage your team members to take a look at these, there's a lot of really cool things that they can benefit from. Studies show that people spend almost 30% of their time checking email, working in email. And that happens about 74 times a day. It's a lot. Constant interruption from email most certainly impacts performance, but it also leads to a higher level of stress. Remember, it's not just responding to the email, but it's also thinking about the email. So the more things that we get, the more things that we're thinking about. And with it being on our phones, it's certainly a tool that most people are connected to at all times. And that that same study shows that when we removed email completely, and I'm not suggesting that we do, but when you do remove email, people multitask less, right? They're not keeping an eye on their inbox, and they experience less stress. So it's a pretty cool thing, and a small tweak that we can make. This focus report that you see here is part of the MyAnalytics dashboard. You can also access that dashboard through the portal, the Office 365 portal, Microsoft 365 portal. And it gives you insight into how much time you've booked for focus, and it helps you book time for focus. So we want to be intentional about carving out time, protecting that time on your calendar so that you can get your most important work done. It also helps show you like where your unread emails are, and you flag people that are important to you so you can see if there's anything that needs your attention. So right here from this dashboard. Another dashboard that's available from MyAnalytics is the network piece. And this piece helps you identify ways to optimize time with your important people. So this could be people you work with every day very closely. It could be people within the organization that are leaders, but it also could be external vendors. It could be an important client. So being able to track how you interact with these people using this data, you can see within the last month how active you are with them. And you will also see suggestions on how you can improve those connections. Again, whether it's your manager or your direct reports. There's also this map here about top collaborators. You can toggle between map and list, but it basically gives you all the details about these important people in your network, and how and also suggests people that you might want to start adding into this data so you can stay connected with them. It's kind of neat to be able to see how much you're working with them and how quick you are to respond to them. I took a snapshot of my important contacts, and as you can see, we do a lot of talking. And I'm pretty impressed that I've read 90% of what Clay, my boss, has had to say, and that it only takes me 11 minutes to respond to him. So
those are very impressive stats.
Right? I'm not going to brag, but I feel like that's pretty good. Now, if I open up Jim's contact and I see that I've read 75% of what he sends, and it takes me 3 days to get back to him, I might need to give Jim just a little bit more attention to make sure that we are connected well. One of the things about connecting, when we think about who we're connecting with, direct reports and managers are obviously a very important component of it. But there was a study that said that top salespeople, they're salespeople, so they're more likely to network externally. But those who actually had larger internal networks, so they had stronger relationships with their coworkers across the board, they were 33% more successful than those who did not. So this idea of networking is extremely important in our professional advancement. And there's data to be able to help us do a better job where it matters most. Data is great. We also have to know how to use the data. So by selecting those important contacts, we can drill down to the information that we want.
We had 2 comments come in on that, not really questions, but one says, talking about the importance of the personal connections and everything, especially after a year like the last one, it's super important to stay in contact with your internal team members that you're not seeing every day. And then the other one says, I recognize the MyAnalytics from the email that comes to my inbox on a regular basis, but I did not realize all this information was in there. So now you do.
That is so, I'm sorry that you haven't opened it, but I'm so excited that you are familiar with that report, because yes, that actually forgot to mention that those reports come already. It's all the data is there. So now what we can do is take this information and tell and encourage our folks, hey, there's this data. Have you checked it out? encouraging those focus times and saying, hey, there's tools to help you identify when's the right time to do that. That really puts our money where our mouth is when it comes to using technology in a healthy way. Those insights also come over to Outlook, lots of O's in the Microsoft realm. Their insights is actually Viva Insights, is which you will see eventually, because it is the Microsoft Viva will replace those MyAnalytics and Workplace Analytics brands. So the Insights add-in for Outlook is a really cool tool to help you because, right, building habits is important, but we have to practice those habits in real time in order to get really good at them. The data is data unless we do something with it. So while you're working, if you have this add-in, while you're working, as you can see, there's messages here that say, hey, Marissa, don't send that email at 11 o'clock at night because your colleagues aren't working. So be nice. You can schedule the delay right from there. This is all using the artificial intelligence. So it's learning, it's using the information about the people and where they're located. So if you have people in other geographies, other time zones, it's going to be thoughtful about that. It's going to be thoughtful about the people that you reach out to regularly. It's going to build habits over time. It's building habits. Well, we're building habits. Definitely didn't intend to say that, but it was there, so I had to take it.
It worked.
It worked. It definitely worked. But you can also see that if there's something in a email that looks like a task related, it can suggest creating tasks to stay on target. It could also say like, hey, you're trying to schedule this over your focus time. Don't, please. And then this other piece is, my screen is really small. And, if you're scheduling out of office time, it'll say, oh, wait, you're going to schedule out of office time. Do you want to come up with a plan so that you can prepare in advance and leave behind? So again, thinking about how you're using the technology and also all the capabilities that Microsoft 365 has on the back end, all of these, you need to create a plan. Great. We have the Planner app. So you click into that, you go there. Oh, you need to schedule this for later? Well, you can. There's already that functionality in Outlook, but now it's connecting you to it in that real time. So real on the go advice from your friendly Microsoft robot. One of the other things that's pretty cool if we're talking about wellness is that there's actually a well-being component. And I like to meditate, and I find it to be very relaxing. One of the things that is coming to well-being is Microsoft has partnered with Headspace. So there's going to be recommendations to build meditations, guided meditations into your day. So that will be here. But as you can see, there's all sorts of different recommendations and tools to help you make sure you're holding yourself accountable or your team is holding themselves accountable. So when we encourage the use of these tools and these metrics, we're telling our team, we want you to do this. And here's some additional insight to really help you do it. And as I always like to wrap up, you've all achieved high score. We are organized now in teams. We're providing clarity. We brought it all together. We're automating where we can to simplify, but then we're also remembering to balance that work and compassion and focusing on the well-being.
We did have a question specifically about that last well-being factor. When you mentioned meditation, I believe this got sparked up. Obviously, a lot of the MyAnalytics is focused on personal. Is there a way as a leader to set times for your entire team, whether it be meditation or focus time or whatever it may be?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can, while there's no tool directly in the personal productivity center in your MyAnalytics, you can certainly do that stuff within the calendaring. You can go into Teams or you can go into Outlook and you can create an appointment block for all of the folks involved. At WorkSmart, we actually have a meditation class that happens regularly. So we have somebody that leads the guided meditations. So we put it on our calendars, and that time is blocked off regularly for folks to be able to join that. So it's an certainly important tool that you can use. What's really cool is that Microsoft Teams and Outlook has something called a scheduling assistant. So if you're talking about coordinating time for your internal folks, you can see on their schedule where they're available. So you can go ahead and plug in that time on their behalf. Then I would recommend following up on one-on-ones to hold them accountable to actually following that time if it's meant to be individual personalized time. Now, I will say that if you're interested in going beyond the personal feature, Viva is going to be a really awesome tool that takes this idea of praise and recognition and well-being and productivity, learning, all sorts of stuff, connecting. It's going to be a great experience platform. So if you're interested in finding out more about what that will look like once it gets released to the public, that may be something that you're interested in. Cost effectiveness is certainly, when it comes to Microsoft, some of these solutions are developed for enterprise level. So whether it'll be a cost-effective solution for small businesses, not quite sure yet. But these personal productivity pieces can gain a lot of insight for individuals.
All the personal well-being chit chat is just in time for Mental Health Awareness Month, which is great, especially after last year. Like we all need to remember that is just as important in our personal lives as is our work lives. So
it's very true. And this avoiding interruptions and having communication at the right time, asynchronous communication, the ability to send a message when someone is not expect an immediate response is superb. It's a great development. But when we're combined with the fact that we're adopting these technologies to do that, while we're also more distributed, as folks come back to the office, we're going to see more of a balance in figuring out how that will work. But I suspect that a lot of the things that we've learned over the last year are going to come to our forefront. So being thoughtful about when going back to kind of like the commute time and making sure that we are protective of our time when we're checking devices or sending messages. It's kind of the ownership is on both ends. You know, I don't want to I don't expect you to answer after hours, but then I probably shouldn't email you after hours. So just little small tips that we can make huge impact on. And I will say for anyone that's interested more in the MyAnalytics, there is some incredible documentation done by Microsoft because they are pumping in a lot of work into these kind of taking responsible technology. So there's some really cool playbooks, habit playbooks, to help go even further into how you can take some of these components of the focus, the well-being, and the network and turn those into goals and follow through.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we did have at least one more question come in. And while we're answering all of these, everyone, please feel free to send any other questions that you may have right there into the Q&A. We can check them. If you want to go to the next slide as well, they can check out our email. So you can contact either Marissa or myself at our emails there. We're always looking for suggestions and topics and that you all want to hear about. So feel free to send us any feedback or any of your thoughts about the webinar. Looks like one of these questions goes back to the very beginning when we were talking about channels. So with all of the different channels and teams that Microsoft has, and people are probably going to be part of more than one, how do you keep your own personal teams organized if you are part of those multiple channels or teams within the app?
I highly I highly recommend starting with notifications. Teams by default has a lot of notifications. It wants to keep you in the loop, which is great. However, you definitely need to do some massaging to make sure that you're seeing the things that you want so you can prioritize. We did do, this is the day of cheat codes. We did do a cheat code specifically on approvals. So we can send that link if you want to make note of who sent that to us. We can go ahead and send that. But if you look on the screen right now, under those ellipses next to each of those, when you go into, actually, let me flip to the next page because you're going to want to do this at the channel level. What you can do is when you click on it, there's a tab for notification, a button for notifications, and you can get notifications in your activities. You can get notifications by email. You can get notifications by pop-up banner. So it's important to select which of those you want to hear. There's going to be channels that you're a part of that you don't care about at all. You want to be able to go into that to see the updates. For me, HR is one of those things that I'm not going to check like in the moment. The marketing channel, the events channel, those are where I'm collaborating regularly. So I have all HR notifications turned off, but I do get a daily email. So that way, if I see something like, ooh, there's a new change to our performance review process, or I can expense my Apple Watch part of it. I want to know those things. So being able to decide what you're hearing, that's one of the biggest things about noise inside of teams. The other thing that's really helpful is pinning and hiding. So you can hide channels that you are not interested in seeing on a day-to-day basis, and you can essentially favorite those that you want to see. They don't have to be part of the same team, but they show at the top of your teams, which is great. So you can get to them right away.
Cool. Looks like we had another one here that says, for forms, can you import an Excel template to then create into a workflow? This would be for a user form that would be across different functional groups in the organization. I can repeat that if you need to.
Yeah, repeat it because I think I got it, but I want to make sure.
Okay, so for forms, can you import an Excel template to then create into a workflow? So I'm assuming with the results, obviously. And this would be for a user form that would be across different functional groups in the organization.
So if I understand it correctly, what we have is a form with results into an Excel spreadsheet, and then the Excel spreadsheet.
Can you import the Excel template to then create into a workflow?
So it depends on what the workflow is. So there are templates in Power Automate that will let you take, you can take the results and you can populate those into lists inside of Teams. There's several different things you could do with it. You can do if-then branches. So if you have if it's a new user form and if it's I'm going to use WorkSmart as an example because I feel like I've been here my whole life and that's all I know. So if we're hiring a new help desk person, we want to notify their direct manager that their equipment needs to be ordered. You can do if-then branches within Power Automate to do that, to notify the right people or the right team. You can create, like I said, you can dump those results in Excel, but you can also take those and put them elsewhere. You can put them in SharePoint. You can put them in a Teams. You can make a file from it. There's all sorts of options. But if you want to talk more specifically about that case, feel free to reach out to me directly so I make sure that I answered that correctly.
Yeah.
Try not to lie. Do the right thing.
Any more questions? Send our way. I know today was pretty straightforward, I would say. Taking something that we all use every day and leveling it up.
Making it easier. I like that. Leveling it up.
Yes. We're all very comfortable with Teams at this point. So let's see. We got another one here. Oh, can we put the emails back on the screen?
Oh, yeah. All right. Which the emails for insights?
If you want to clarify which email to contact.
All right. let's see. These are flows.
I believe.
That might be backwards. All right. I've got this email one, but I don't think that's the right one. If we could clarify further which one that is.
Or if you have a specific question about them, we might be able to just answer them as well.
Oh, you know what? I just reread it and I understand now. Hold, please. They're asking for our email addresses to contact us.
Sorry about that. When I was not, my brain. Sorry about
it's that. Like, we'll tell you all you need to know about technology. Just don't ask us a simple question. We'll make it really hard.
Our brains are too far deep into Microsoft Teams right now. Sorry about that.
The emails are right here. You can also always email marketing@worksmart.com. That is a shared mailbox for all things marketing. And so we definitely see that regularly as well.
Whichever is easiest.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we have any other questions here. Anyone else have any last minute thoughts or questions?
Since I was stumped on the last question, which was simply, what's your email, then try us.
I know, man. Maybe they don't want to ask us any more questions. Well, if anyone thinks of any after, feel free to email us at whichever of the addresses that we just shared finally. So it looks like we're wrapping up just in time here. Just as a quick reminder, our next webinar will be on Thursday, May 27th. That will be a skill building class where we'll focus on Teams again, OneDrive, and much more there. Really just, it's more of a skill-based, just to teach you how to use those tech tools that we talk about. So be sure and register for that one. That is on our website, and I will throw that registration link in the chat as well. And then we will be out of the office. So there will be no live webinars for the month of June. However, we do have a lot in store for you while we're gone, and it may potentially have something to do with being out of the office, staying productive, that whole 9 yards. So stay tuned for more information on that. We will definitely be getting that out soon. With that, we want to thank you all so much for watching today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. And I hope you all have a great end to your week.
Yes, thank you all for coming. And thank you, Michaela.
Yes, thank you. I hope to make my return one day, even though I'm sure Dawn, we miss Dawn. But yes, thank you all for coming, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.